Look at this chart. Of the roughly 2.4 billion Christians worldwide, a massive majority, about 1.3 billion, practice Catholicism. That footprint spans the globe, with the largest modern concentration found in Brazil, where millions gather at churches exactly like this one. Every single one of those billions of followers traces their faith back to a shared starting point, Rome, around 30 AD, under the leadership of St. Peter. But if you examine how the religion is actually practiced today, you'll see a sharp divide. That ancient unity fractured over a practical dilemma regarding how authority should be structured. This map shows the original dividing line. On the left, the Western territories anchored in Rome. On the right, the East, centered in the Byzantine Empire. The geographical split forced a choice. Do you submit to a single, centralized ruler, or do you maintain a network of independent regional leaders? That choice created the two branches we are evaluating today, Roman Catholicism and Eastern Orthodoxy. To understand the reality of what happened to that original 30 AD foundation, we need to compare their leadership models, their physical buildings, and the daily rituals of the people in the pews side by side. Catholicism operates on a strict top-down hierarchy. At the apex is a single global leader, the Pope. This means doctrinal decisions are finalized efficiently. The rules are standardized, ensuring 1.3 billion followers operate under unified theology. Eastern Orthodoxy takes a completely different path. They outright reject the concept of a single global pontiff dictating the rules. Instead, they rely on a decentralized network. Leadership falls to regional patriarchs who guide their specific geographical areas. So, as a believer, you are weighing two distinct systems. You choose the strict doctrinal uniformity of Catholicism, or the Orthodox model that prioritizes regional autonomy and cultural adaptation. Because these two branches govern themselves so differently, the physical spaces they build and the way they actually worship diverge completely. You can see the result of that governance the moment you walk through their doors. Catholic design uses physical space to enforce its narrative. You'll find grandiose structures with three-dimensional statues and complex stained glass windows meant to visually instruct. For centuries, Rome even mandated that liturgical prayers be conducted strictly in Latin, standardizing the believer's experience anywhere in the world. Orthodoxy relies on a different aesthetic. Instead of towering Western Gothic arches, their structures emphasize distinct, rounded domes that reflect local building traditions. Inside, they prioritize flat, traditional iconography. You won't find the 3D statues common in Rome. Instead, walls are covered in highly stylized two-dimensional paintings. These are deliberate tools. Rome builds to project a single global dogma, while Orthodox architecture preserves specific regional heritage. That structural difference also determines who stands at the front of the room. Catholicism requires the men who act as intermediaries to live modest, celibate lives, dedicating their complete focus to the institution. Orthodoxy permits married men to be ordained as priests. This places spiritual leaders who have their own families directly in charge of local congregations. The path to spiritual cleansing is also heavily formalized in the West, structured strictly into 7 designated sacraments. This process begins immediately. Catholic doctrine relies on infant baptism as the specific mechanism to cleanse original sin from the moment of birth. When a believer needs to repent later in life, the process is highly mediated. Sins are confessed to a priest inside an enclosed wooden booth. Even private prayer is regulated. Catholics traditionally count out specific sequences of prayers using physical items like rosary beads. Every one of these daily rituals requires the believer to engage with a structured, priest-mediated pathway, a direct reflection of Rome's top-down authority. That centralized control eventually extends past the daily rituals and dictates what happens after death. This flowchart illustrates the baseline Christian view of the afterlife. Souls depart the center, following 2 absolute paths, heaven or hell. But Catholicism inserts a distinct third state. They define purgatory as a transitional phase for purification before reaching heaven. This 3-tiered system is a specific product of Roman theology, and it is not universally adopted by other branches. Only an absolute centralized Roman authority has the power to establish and enforce a theological dogma this complex across 1 billion followers without fracturing the religion. When you weigh Catholicism against Eastern Orthodoxy, you are ultimately analyzing two competing models of governance. The Catholic trade-off requires submitting to singular papal authority. In return, you gain entry into a massive, unified global community anchored by highly structured sacraments. The Orthodox trade-off rejects that single point of authority. You rely instead on a decentralized network of patriarchs, prioritizing the preservation of specific regional and cultural traditions. They both draw their faith from the exact same ancient root, but deciding how authority should be distributed is the only way to understand how their daily realities became so completely different.